Welcome, everybody, to Close Up Radio. It's a real pleasure, and Close Up Television. It's a pleasure to have you here on Close Up Television Radio. I am your host, Jim Masters. We thank you so very much for joining us. We are always celebrating extraordinary people who are doing incredible things to make our world a better place. And somebody that we are celebrating right now here is somebody very, very special, somebody who's so dedicated to the task and somebody who does work that really does make our world a better place. You know, when disaster strikes, it can strike at a moment's notice. And do you know what to do in an emergency situation? What if a disaster happens while at home? What if your family is at home, but you are at work? Is your health insurance, life insurance, and homeowners insurance all up to date? These are important questions that we have to ask. You know, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Will you be prepared? Jeanie Edwards is the founder of the CPR GALS, specializing in disaster preparedness education and first aid training. She says the question is not if something is going to happen, but rather when. Once you accept that, you can start preparing for the inevitable. And with training, you'll feel a whole lot more comfortable and confident because you can handle pretty much anything that gets thrown at you. Of course, disaster may not always be an earthquake or hurricane or a tornado. Maybe a loved one or a colleague has collapsed from a heart attack suddenly. The CPR gals, what they do, which is really incredible, they teach people how to save lives, offering classes in CPR and first aid as well. First aid classes are important so people can be prepared and confident enough to act until they are really ready to go. And of course, as you are looking for the uniformed first responders to arrive as well, which is so important. So you can sort of get like a little head start on the situation. She says one of the things to do truly is to keep the patient calm, make sure, 911 has been called, and to begin administering CPR because every second truly does count. CPR, of course, is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And when the body stops breathing, you can no longer feel a pulse. You need to take over the body's job, breathing and pumping the heart to keep the vital organs alive until advanced medical care can begin. Jeanie was inspired by her grandparents, who were British Red Cross in the 1920s. Jeanie herself has been a volunteer with the American Red Cross since 1968 and an EMT for well over 20 years. She's most proud of knowing that she's made a difference in people's lives and that there is this ripple effect. We're going to be talking about the CPR gals and also disaster services and supplies and so much more on this extraordinary conversation that we have in store for you here on this episode of Close Up Radio. Without further ado, let's welcome our very special guest, Jeanie Edwards of the CPR gals, to Close Up Radio for this one-on-one conversation. Jeanie, welcome to the program. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you with us today.
It's an honor to be here. Hello, everyone.
It's good to have you with us. And one thing that Jeanie said is, Jim, if that, alarm goes off, that's it. You're always surrounded by, the opportunity to care for people, which I think is really fantastic, Jeanie. What first inspired you to even want to go into this work initially?
Well, my grandparents, as you mentioned, were British. They moved to Pasadena in 1921 and became American Red Cross. So hanging out with them as a small child, I grew up in the Red Cross and got to learn a lot, got to help, and that progressed over the years. The other two very influential people in my life were two doctors, one of whom everybody's heard the name, the other kind of went into well, I can't think of that word. But the first one is Dr. Charles Richter, who invented the seismograph and the Richter scale. So my father was a Caltech engineer and met him at Caltech, so I grew up with them. And then Dr. Ellis Jones, who had been a Vietnam medic, come back and became a doctor, started working at Huntington Memorial Hospital, became the chief of the ER after several years, and also introduced a trauma center. Well, in October of 1972, when they were extending the freeway through La Cañada, there was a bridge collapse and people died. He was furious because he and his Vietnam medics had tried to implement a program to treat people out in the field, which was not heard of at that point. So after that incident, he and his gang went to City Hall and just said, hey, we're doing this. And they gave in. There was 6 months of training and testing and gathering data. It did very well. People's lives were saved. It went to state, same process. Then it went nationally. So Dr. E is one of the handful of men that started what is now the paramedic program in this country. So having grown up with both of them and so many other people that the families knew, I could never separate out health and safety from disaster, because in a disaster, people get hurt. So you need to know what to do to be prepared to help individuals, but also to help your family in disaster situations that are going to be longer term.
That's, yeah, situations that sometimes, come at us left and right. Out of this extraordinary familial background, you decided to create the CPR GALS. Tell us about what inspired you to create the CPR GALS and about some of the extraordinary work that you do.
Well, I had become a CPR instructor with Red Cross and did that many years, and was also a disaster instructor and a local and national disaster responder. And then in 2010, the Red Cross changed their business model, and it went more corporate than it had been. So things were changing. And then we had couple of years later, we had major fires up in the San Gabriel Mountains. And then after that, we knew it was coming. We had the debris flows and people were evacuated. We set up a shelter, and there were several of us in the middle of the night chatting, which is what you do with your fellow volunteers when your clients are asleep. And we kind of came up with the idea to start our own Red Cross. And that was not going to work. But I started getting the idea that I could start teaching outside of Red Cross. I was also at that point an American Heart instructor and an ASHI instructor, which is American Safety and Health Institute. So there were a couple of us that decided to just start the CPR GALS and see what happened. And it's been a little over 10 years now.
So how does it actually work? What is the process like? When do people avail themselves of the opportunity of using your services, Jeanie?
Well, we're mobile. We never had an office. So a client will call and we'll have a discussion, make sure that the classes that they're requesting are the right ones that suit their needs. Then we set up a time and we go to the client with all the supplies. We teach the class, and then we get back to the house, tell the whichever, usually American Heart computer system that we taught the class, and then they will receive their cards in an email a day or two after that.
So that's an interesting process, and being mobile, I'm sure, really helps the situation on many levels as well, right?
It does. And now with Zoom, the last couple of years, we've gotten a whole new take. There are many classes that we can do that are not certified. So PET CPR, we have an infant presentation, which deals strictly with babies, for new or about to be new parents and other family members. We have water safety and several others that we can do on Zoom that can be across the country. And the great thing about the infant one is if you've got your parents in one state and the other about to be or new parent has his parents in a third state, we can get everybody all on the same page and everybody's learning all at the same time.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's the best, right? When
It is.
everybody is sort of literally on the same page and learning. Um, it's really amazing. You know, we mentioned this that recently in the news, actor Bob Odenkirk had suffered a heart attack on the set of shooting the final season of Better Call Saul. And he said if anything can come from the interviews he's doing to promote that particular series, a popular show, it's not just for people to watch the series, but to go take a CPR course and learn CPR. If it wasn't for people on set who knew CPR specifically, he would have passed away. And of course, there'd be no final season, but it would have been a final curtain for him. That sort of brings it home when you have somebody that's well known who's actually advocating for CPR courses, instruction, and knowledge building, right?
And then you have the gentleman with the football team who went out on national television. Same thing. So one misconception that everybody has is people who have heart attacks do not need CPR. You are conscious. Your heart has an issue, and that's a plumbing problem. CPR is given when you go into cardiac arrest. That is an electrical issue with the impulse from the brain telling the heart to beat. So they're two totally different medical issues. They are not to be confused, which most people do. And people can have heart attacks without ever going into cardiac arrest. People can go into sudden cardiac arrest assuming because of their actions, their activities, their lifestyles, that they're perfectly healthy, but then something goes wrong and they go down within seconds. So they're two totally different issues.
That's good to know. Well, that was really good to know. How many times would you say you've administered CPR? It's got to be hundreds,
I have no
thousands.
idea. I have no idea. 20 some odd years, but I first got certified when I was 12, and back then you went back every year. So I went when I was 13, and then about a month after that, the house next door was on fire. I ran down the stairs, called the fire department. And again, this was pre-911, pre-paramedics. Ran outside when I knew fire was on their way. And the gentleman was lying in our front lawn. And the wife was still in the window of the second story, and neighbors were yelling, jump, don't jump, and that sort of thing. So I went over and I nudged him and nothing. And I got down and checked for breathing and pulse, and there was none. And I started CPR, and that was my first experience, which was very interesting. So fire put out the fire, and the gentleman in the white coats with the stretchers and the white station wagon had come and picked up the gentleman and the wife. And I still get a little teary over this. Because of what I did, I found out later that they had actually gotten him back at the hospital. He lived for 4 hours. And the thing was, they were kind of like second grandparents. They had celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary a couple of months before that. So they were actually able to say goodbye to each other. And that was another stepping stone.
How do you keep the emotions in check? How do you not, as you're administering CPR and doing what you can, how do you not have your own heart explode emotionally?
It's training, and it's zoning out. You do what you do, and you don't think about anything else. You just focus on what's at hand. When you're in the fire department, police department, rescue, same with military, after an event, there's what we call a debriefing. So you talk about things. And some events are never going to go away. And triggers can happen. And usually it's a smell of some sort. That's the biggest trigger. But you talk to people, you learn how to deal with things like that. You've always got your fellow rescuers to call and just say, hey, or you can sit on the phone and watch a movie and not talk to each other.
Right.
But in all of my classes, I tell my students, if anything ever happens, to get help, to talk to someone.
Yeah.
Because it's going to affect you. And it may not right then and there, but it may have something trigger it a couple months later, a couple of years later. You're thinking, oh, it's just because I didn't get enough sleep, or, you know, things have been chaotic. No, it's probably that event that you never dealt with in the past.
Right, exactly. The emotion just sort of stays inside, and then every once in a while sort of leaks out at the times that you can't even truly predict. But you do have to really maintain during the crucial times, which, you know, I applaud folks like you and doctors and nurses, EMTs and police and fire for having this ability to be able to do it and get out there and roll up your sleeves and do it again, you know, tomorrow and the next day and the next day. What is it like to, and we've always heard, even as kids, learn CPR and learn the Heimlich maneuver. You never know when somebody you're dining with starts choking. Very important thing. And not everybody has taken the time to learn these very important, crucial things. And then you'll have situations where something happens and there is that person in the room, on the airplane, on the train, wherever they are, who took the time to pursue and has the knowledge, and it's been life-saving for many people. What is it like for people that are watching right now, or like, oh, this is something I can't do. I don't know how to, I don't know. What is it like to administer CPR?
You can't really explain it. You have to experience it. It's not easy. It's not fun. But the point is, and I tell all my students again, because it's class, we're working on the mannequins. It's as real as we can get it, but it's not really real. And if something ever does happen in real life, and at that moment, you just can't function because it's not family or because it is family. You've got enough confidence and enough training that you can kind of take the position as the conductor. When I talk to different groups, especially nursing or medical staff, and we're doing basic life support classes, which is for them versus the layman, many people think doctors know how to do CPR, and most of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't have to. They're the conductor. If you've got somebody calling out orders, if you've got somebody saying, okay, you go call 911 and tell them this, that, and the next thing, point to a couple other people, you go outside and wait for rescue to show up and bring them in.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody in a medical situation is taking notes, documenting what procedures are taking place, what drugs are given, how much, the times, etc. You may be able to function in those positions. You may be able to do the breathing with a pocket mask, as you see there. You may be the one that does the compressions. So in a real world situation, such as a baby choking in a restaurant, you can take charge of all of that. And if somebody else steps up and has said, okay, I can do this, then you're working as a team.
It's so important. We're taking a look at some of these incredible shots that we have here of things happening in action. Tell us about what we're seeing on the screen now, Jeanie.
That was an EMR class that we did for the Red Cross. EMR is emergency medical responder. In some areas of the country, more rural, an EMR is about the same thing as an EMT. And most rural areas have volunteer fire departments, which is a big deal when it comes to disasters because people are so spread out. And your golden hour, that first important hour to get people medical care, is kind of shot to begin with. But anyway, the Red Cross trained all of the volunteers that worked at the Rose Parade. And so we would have the class in July, August, September, and get everybody trained for New Year's. And then people would often ask me, why do you not go out and work as Red Cross during the parade? Well, it's because I was Tournament of Roses. So I had a whole different job to do on New Year's. But we had several people go down over the years on the parade route. And we had all of our Red Cross volunteers lining the parade route. And then also at some of the other functions, float decorating, post parade, different events. Because we just do not have the number of medical, fire, police, etc., that is needed for 1 million people every year.
We were showing these photos as well, give people sort of a demonstration just from a visual perspective. Tell us about what we're actually seeing happening here.
That is a picture that someone sent and wanted to know why it was not a great picture. Most people would think this is fine. Well,
yeah, they would look at that and say, okay, so that's what you do, right?
That's what you do. You do, but there are a couple of little tweaks. Whenever you have a breathing barrier on someone, when you go to compressions, you want to remove the breathing barrier because if that person has something come out of his mouth, which is the nice way of putting it, it gets trapped and they can aspirate and choke. So you want to remove that off of the person's face. With the hand placement, yes, the heel of the hand is in the right position because you need all the pressure on the sternum, which pushes against the heart and pushes that against the backbone to squeeze out the oxygenated blood. You do not want your fingers on the patient or have your fingers curled because that distributes the weight off of the sternum onto the ribs where it's more likely you can actually break a rib. It's little bitty things, but they're all very important.
But they're all, and then we showed, of course, the babies as well.
Oh, yeah. These are my fun photos.
Yeah, this is very, very cool. And baby Annie.
That's baby Annie.
What's happening here?
We're checking to see whether or not she's breathing. So we have her head in the proper position, and then the student would lean down, put her ear next to the mouth and nose as she's kind of looking toward the chest to see if she hears anything or feels anything. And this picture is if she's going to do compressions. Because babies are so small, you just use 2 fingers, not the entire heel of your hand.
That's so important to know. Great information that you're sharing with us. The CPR GALS, like you said, mobile. This is interesting. Wildfire presentation. Tell us about this one, Jeanie.
That was a networking group. And so I was asked to do a presentation. And that is Scott lying on the ground. So Scott and I had set this up before it was my turn to get up and speak. And we were talking about what to do with choking and how to administer abdominal thrusts, aka the Heimlich. And so we decided that it would be fun for him to pass out because abdominal thrusts did not work. So he passed out, and I showed everyone how to take him to ground. And then what I did not even think about was one of the members of that group happened to be an RN.
Ah.
So she comes, and I'd forgotten to tell her. So she comes running over going, what can I do? And I said, I'm trying to whisper to her, no, this is all planned.
Yes, is that right?
So she kind of backed off. I had looked at somebody, pointed, goes, call 911, tell them this, that. And the next thing, pointed at someone else and said, you go outside, wait for rescue, come on back in. And so I told the nurse to go get the guy that went out to wait to bring him back. But then at this point, we have gone from conscious choking to unconscious choking. So now I'm pointing at him saying, for the next lesson, give me a call or invite me back. And that is for another time.
That's amazing.
It was kind of fun.
It's cool stuff here too, huh, Jeanie?
That's some of the representations of what we do. Those are my pet mannequins. And there's Annie and Junior and baby Annie, and again, the pet mannequins for pet first aid and CPR.
A disaster kit is something important to have too. Yeah. Tell us about that, the importance of it, and what we're seeing here.
This was a small disaster kit, usually kept in the car. Whenever you are anywhere, you don't know what's going to happen. The main things that you want to have are water, food, and shelter. So if you're in the car, you have theoretically shelter, but you want water, you want some kind of food, whether it's bars or your favorite, munchies, protein snacks, whatever it is that you need for you. You want a first aid kit and a couple other things. And that was what was in the first aid kit, or in the disaster kit for the car. The one in the back is a larger one that has it's a backpack, and it had more stuff. And those you can keep at home, or like in a camper or RV, something like that. So we had the incident back east last year. I forgot exactly when. I think it was the 73 highway. It got snowed in, and there was actually a reporter in that group of cars that was stuck. And they ended up being there for over 24 hours before anybody could come in and remove the snow.
Down by Washington, D.C. and Virginia. Yeah.
Yes. So when you're in situations like that and you're freezing, literally, we can teach you how to and when to start your car to get some heat. You want to make sure that you've got a shovel, because if it's a lot of snow, you've got to make sure your tailpipe is cleared and get out of the car, have suitable clothing to get out to clear the tailpipe. Otherwise, you're going to have carbon monoxide buildup, and that'll get you. You want to make sure that if you have any medical issues, you've got some of your medication, you've got something to swallow it with. If you're a diabetic, you need your sugar supplies or whatnot. You need extra clothing, extra blankets, something comfortable, something to do, a light of some sort. People like to read. Personally, my takeaway is always in all my disaster go kits is crocheting, because that helps me. I can't read on a disaster because I get sleepy, but I can crochet away and have no issues.
What are some of the kinds of disasters you've had to deal with that you've experienced?
My first one officially was a flood in Dallas in April of 93 or 95. And so there were a handful of us that went down to Dallas. American Airlines had just opened up their new headquarters. So we were training a lot of American Airlines people as well as dealing with the disaster of the flooding. And then Oklahoma City bombing happened a week or so after that. So we all got called to go to Oklahoma City. American Airlines all stuck us on a plane and flew us up there. So that was my first kind of big disaster. And then I was also in New York City for 3 months in 2001. But I have worked countless hurricane seasons, tornado seasons, floods, obviously California and the fire seasons. So, and then you've got all the local stuff. The car goes through the house catches on fire, little mini malls catch on fire, something in a chemical warehouse blows up, all kinds of different things.
Life could be interesting, can it?
Yes.
What do you do to counter that? How do you relax? Do you go to the lake, to the ocean? Do you go out in nature? How are you able to shut it off when you're always at the ready? What are some of the tips that you have that you do, Jeanie?
The joke is you drink. No,
That's a good one.
I drink water. Occasionally I will have an alcoholic beverage if I'm going out to dinner with friends. But you want to stay hydrated. Always stay hydrated. That's a biggie. So I work with, and have worked with over the years, pet rescues, mainly German Shepherds. I've had Shepherds for over 50 years. So I always have a pack that greets me when I come home. I've got one down there kind of asleep. And which brings me to another point before I forget. Everything that the CPR GALS offers pretty much can be done as a fundraiser, as long as it's billed as a fundraiser. So with the pet rescues, I worked with Westside German Shepherd Rescue of Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego. And then once a quarter, we would have a pet first aid CPR class for all those people who had adopted. And we raised the price because we billed it as a fundraiser. And then I would teach all these new pet parents CPR and first aid for their critters so that they could be prepared in case something happened to their new babies. And then I love doing that, working with rescues, fostering, foster failing, waiting for New Year's and putting on a parade, crocheting. Not a really exciting life in that sense. Not a lot of vacations, like none really, because you're always on call.
You're always on call, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
then during all this, I also took care of a generation of my family and a few friends' families that were all up in their mid to late 90s. So kind of like you can't leave.
yeah, you've earned that mug. Yeah, so many
That's my Eeyore. Eeyore is one of my there's Eeyore. I love Eeyore. He goes with me everywhere. I've got a lot of stuffed Eeyores, and I always have one of those in my go bag.
kind of like a good luck charm on so many different levels, which I think is.
And my Eeyore ears, they go with me. So when it gets really bad at headquarters, in the middle of a disaster, people are stressed, I put on my Eeyore ears.
That's fantastic. So, and you've got a teddy bear to the left of you too. That's very comforting during crazy times.
Yeah.
You know, when people hear the CPR GALS, they may be thinking that there's a bunch of you friends together. It just has that warm feeling. The CPR GALS. Tell us about what it actually is. Is it a group of you together on the same team?
It was. Now it's me. One of the gals that was in the group, there were 3 of us, injured her back to the point she can no longer do a whole lot. And then another one had a few years ago family issues And so we talked about that, and she needed to take care of her family. So it is now me, and I have spoken with a couple other people that just were not the right fit, which is not saying that they weren't wonderful people. It's just that they had other ideas of what they wanted to do. And my concept is basic. Go out and teach people, and teach them the right way, and teach them how to help save a life, and be honest and not flowery. So I'm just a down to earth kind of a gal. And that's what I want. It's, yes, I need to make a living, but that's not the point of all this. The
Yeah.
point is to get your communities safer, your family safer, because you just never know what's going to happen.
I want to let folks know as well that the myriad of classes that are available is extraordinary. There really is something for everybody. Adult CPR, child CPR, infant CPR, advanced bleeding control, automated external defibrillator to learn about that, babysitter training, basic first aid, basic life support, bloodborne pathogens, family caregiving, a family guide to first aid and emergency preparedness, first aid safety for children and babies, first aid for gardeners, infant presentation, pet CPR for cats and dogs, sports safety training, something that we don't always think about, water safety, of course, and wilderness remote first aid. You've got a myriad of incredible things available for people, don't you,
And
Jeanie?
there are more on the way. So with the gardening, people think in their own backyard. Well, I was also a master gardener through the UC extension program for many, many, many years. So we worked with low income families, community gardens, and school gardens. And there are a lot of obstacles in the garden of which you need to be aware. So we would do that as part of our community service and teach people how to be safer as they're out there, because sometimes in a community garden you're the only one that's there.
Right,
And
exactly.
then we've got others that have kind of come about, and I just haven't gotten them formalized yet, but basically anybody and everybody needs to know something. And then we also have the disaster presentations that we can do for civic groups, for schools, for neighborhoods, for businesses. And that website, Disaster Services and Supplies, is a book. That one. That's a book. That is all pure information. Talks about all the different kinds of disasters, what to do before, during, and after, how to get prepared. What if you're sheltering in place? What if you need to evacuate? What kind of things do you need to know beforehand? So that one just keeps going on and on.
That's fantastic. That is really fantastic. There's the logo. We're showing the logo there on the screen. And then, of course, there is this as well, Disaster Preparedness Solutions as well, Jeanie. Tell us about this one, too. You've got several things brewing here, which I think is terrific.
Yes, I do. And this one, okay, before I tell you this one, what do you see when you see this logo?
I see the heartbeat, the pulse of the heart, and I see it where in the beginning it's going through the roof, and then I see because of the connection with DPS, you're back to more of a regulated heartbeat.
Thank you. I love my logo. I thought of this, and
It's fantastic.
so the first part is the seismograph with the disaster, and the second is theoretically normal sinus rhythm. But this one started a few years ago and then got shut down. It's the beginning is a webinar, about 45, 50 minutes, talking about three different things you as a small to medium-sized business owner can do to help protect your business in a disaster. And then there is the phone call that I offer, a consulting phone call at the end if you're interested and you think what I have said got you thinking and has merit. And then there is a program that follows that. And that's an 8-week course that meets once a week on Zoom to discuss what it is that you've learned in the class, which is all recorded. So that was getting started. It had just launched, and then all the lockdown stuff. And so many businesses went out of business, and then things just kept going on and on and on. And so there was no one to actually do this with. And now we're getting back into it, but it's geared more for small to medium-sized businesses as opposed to the general public, which is what the other ones are.
That's great to have the businesses involved too, because sometimes, knowledge is power when you're at the business too. And if there are the proper people there that are, educated in all of this, it can make a world of difference. We've got some great shots too of, here's a CPR class.
That was talking about radio communications during a disaster.
That's a great one. And this is the home fire.
Yes. And I am in there off to my right, so camera left, I guess.
Yes, right, exactly. The American Red Cross, God bless them. I've done work with them, and they are just extraordinary, aren't they?
Yes.
They really are. You talk about if there's a shortage of heroes in our world, including you. I mean, you're very inspiring for young minds who are watching this episode of Close Up Television. And here you are, you've made this your life's calling, your life's mission. This is very inspiring for women, men, old, young, everybody. And you've probably heard that before, that you're a very inspiring and empowering person on many levels, Jeanie, huh?
I try. I really do try. It's a passion. It's been a passion since I was little, and it just won't go away. But
it's in your DNA. That's why
everybody can do something.
Yes.
And the sooner you get started, the more you can continue doing.
That's right.
And get even more prepared. Honestly, nobody can be 100% prepared. And nobody can have exactly what it is that they need. And if you could afford it, where would you put it? But the point of being prepared is getting through that first week or two to be able to keep your family and your neighborhood alive and functioning. And this one was fun. This was for Goodwill, and they had several people come in showing what they had to offer. So on the one side is disaster, on the other hand was CPR. And then they put me near the exit door so that if should something happen, I would be there to direct everybody to safety.
That's a good idea. They say that when you go into theaters and places, always know where all the exits are. And that's so important, right?
Oh, there have been so many theater fires and nightclub fires that were extremely deadly.
Remember the one in Rhode Island?
Oh, yeah.
It was the stage or something. Yeah, the pyrotechnics lit everything up and people couldn't get out. And it was too many people to begin with, I think, in it. And it was just, devastating. Good example of what can truly happen. Tell us about this.
Annies have been around since the 50s. Laerdal makes them. Those are the mannequins that I have and continue to use. There are newer ones. The only one I would consider would be Prestons, but the problem with Prestons, in my view, is that their noses are not pinchable and their mouths are formed in a an O that doesn't move. So that to me is cheating because real people are not like that. And then the newest, latest, greatest, a lot of the mannequins have blinky lights to show you if you're compressing deep enough. And several instructors got those because they're younger and more into the techie world. And we realized after about 6 months, they were spending more time concentrating on blinky lights than they were actually learning compressions. And guess what, folks? People do not come with blinky lights.
They don't come with the blinky lights. No.
No. So when I'm done with you, you're actually going to know what to do. And
Absolutely.
what the important things on which to concentrate are.
Want to let folks know, too, that the CPR GALS is known for the wide spectrum of training offered in CPR classes, first aid training, disaster preparedness education as well. And truly, it's based on the belief that your customers' needs are of the utmost importance. And as a result, a high percentage of businesses repeat customers and referrals. And you're also an authorized provider of the Heart Association, as well as American Safety and Health Institute as well, right?
Right.
That's
and
incredible.
For example, one of the gals that I've trained for 6 times 2, 12, over 12 years now, we had a class yesterday on Zoom. And she was able to get a mannequin. And so we did the class on Zoom. I've certified her 6 times. So that's 12 years.
That's fantastic, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. That
That's
is
great.
absolutely. Yeah. And is there an age range for these kinds of things? You always hear you're never too young, you're never too old to do certain things, but is there a general age range for people, or is it good for everybody to know, as soon as you can?
In my opinion, even small children can be learning things. You get 5, 6-year-olds, first and second graders, who can learn about fire safety, who can learn other medical issues. If a brother or sister or neighborhood kid is bleeding, what do you do? What if they start acting differently? If they're sweating when it's kind of cold outside, they can recognize that things are not normal and go home and get an adult. Now, as far as CPR training goes, you have to be able to do the compressions on the mannequins. So with the babysitter training, it's usually younger 12 to 14-year-olds, sometimes 10-year-olds, and they can do the compressions on the junior mannequins. Some of them are strong enough to do it on the adult, but we're certifying them in child and infant CPR. But their parents are adults. So they can use that. And when you're in adrenaline rush mode, which they would be in an actual event, then it will be easier for them to get the strength they need to help the adults until help arrives. So I personally do not set a younger age to be certified in CPR. I just talk to the parents and say, if your child's strong enough, let's do it. And then when going to people's homes where the husband and wife are getting certified for whatever reasons, and they have a younger child, I have no issues with that child sitting in on the class, learning what he can learn. And often they want to be able to play with the mannequins. So when we get to the drills, it's like, okay, let's see what you can do. And if they can do it and they've been paying attention, they get certified.
That's terrific. And some of it's generational too. I'm sure you've had parents, and then they have the younger ones get certified as well, and other members of the family. When one gets a taste of it and they fall in love with the idea of helping others in the way that you can through this kind of process, first aid training and disaster education. I think it's absolutely
Mhm.
incredible. I want to let folks know too that you're a health and safety instructor and disaster instructor, as well as a local and national disaster responder and volunteer. As I mentioned in the introduction, an EMT yourself for over 20 years, even worked with the LA County Sheriff's Department as disaster communications ham radio operator, member of the El Monte Police Department, mounted unit volunteers, retired, animal lover through and through.
Oh
You
yeah.
support the West Side German Shepherd Rescue of Los Angeles, supports the Pasadena Humane Society, SPCA, and so many incredible things. You mentioned the Tournament of Roses. You're a member, actually, of the Pasadena Tournament of Roses Association, following in the footsteps of your grandfather, uncle, and father,
Right.
and a member of the Kiwanis Club, and also following in the footsteps. And you really truly believe, and as it is in 1 Peter 4:10, each one should use whatever gift he has been given to serve others. This has been instilled in you very early on in your life, hasn't it?
Very early. Very, very early. Which is fine. I mean, I would not have it any other way. I have friends who have made a lot of money and they have big houses and nice cars and fancy clothes and expensive diamond studded Rolexes, and when I see them it's like, hi, my Timex tells time just like your Rolex does. uh,
And
and
it
I'm like,
does.
yeah, and mine probably will last longer.
Yes.
I keep my cars. I'm on my fourth car. I keep them for 18, 20 years. The
What?
thing is,
Yeah, you
I have
should. Yeah.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
I have no issue with people having money and using it. They've earned it. They might as well use it for what they want. But I will never be rich because I've always volunteered. I have spent time away from home when I'm going out on disasters for a couple of months. You don't get paid when you're helping somebody else. When I do have something, then I get friends what they need or give it to somebody to get what they need. Uh, and that's fine. Not everybody is going to be a Rockefeller. Not everybody's going to be a Mother Teresa. So if I had it to do all over again, I'd do what I do.
You are rich in many other ways. You're rich in many other ways. Just think about all the lives that you've touched,
Yeah.
and by being there at the disaster, being there at the time of need, and also the fact that you're paying it forward. You're wanting to teach and instruct others so they too can sort of experience what you've experienced. It's a richer, deeper way of, in a very unselfish way, to conduct yourself, to live your life, which brings bountiful riches that go beyond the cars, the
Oh, yeah.
jewelry, the homes, none of which can be taken with you.
Exactly. Exactly. So I would not change much. There might be a couple things I would have changed, but no, I'm very glad that I was raised the way I was, that my grandparents were such an influence. And then growing up as an old Pasadena family, I mean, if you wanted me to name drop, I could name drop for the next 3 days. But all
Pasadena,
these,
I love that area.
all these people were just people.
Yes.
And yes, many of them had titles and important positions and blah, blah, blah. But they'd come over to my grandparents. We'd have a barbecue. We'd do whatever. They'd go swimming. We just were a big old family. And they also were very prominent in teaching me to give to others, to serve your community, and it will come back. And God has taken care of me over the years. I've had to be concerned a few times, but at that last minute, He provides. And
Yeah.
so and it's wonderful when you are out and about and you see someone that comes up to you and do you remember me? And I'm looking at her, honestly, no. Who are you? Remind me. But I have people over the years that have come back and said, thank you for whatever it is that I did.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. But
Yeah.
you just are nice and then you go on.
You know, people probably really appreciate the fact that you are a straight shooter, that there's no airs about you. You're not, and you are there, you know, not far from Tinseltown, LA, Hollywood. I'm sure there's a lot of folks that are in the area there that are in the industry. A lot of those homes in your area have been used as sets and
Oh, right on my
movies and
street growing up. Yeah.
yeah, all over. But yet you are the real deal. You know what I mean? You are approachable. You're a straight shooter. You don't beat around the bush. And that, especially at times of need, of times of disaster and urgency, emergency situations, there's no time for all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
You got to get right in there
Yeah.
and let you know, you put yourself aside and then tackle the needs of the individual. That who wouldn't want somebody like you coming in, being the one who is taking care of things? But again, you have ways of also taking care of yourself too, right? Because you're such a caretaker, you're such like on the forefront of everything. You take time to make sure that Jeanie gets what Jeanie needs as well, right?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the things that is a must have, coffee, Eeyore. But I never thought I would share this, but
Just don't take your blood pressure after you have coffee.
But no,
It's always
no,
up.
it's fine. And I drink it 24/7 as long as I'm awake and my blood pressure's fine.
It doesn't keep you up, huh?
No, if I'm
Oh.
exhausted, I lie down. That's it. I can
Yeah,
sleep. And
you're good.
usually last thing is drinking coffee and then sleep.
Are you ever on edge? Because like you had mentioned, gee, you know, when that alarm goes off, you got to go. Are you always ready to jump when needed?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
not exactly,
Yeah,
because there are times I'm sitting watching a movie and something happens. It's like, really now?
really. Right. This is the
But
punchline of the movie.
one of the things I have done for myself for decades, and I will name drop this one person, Mary C. She started C's Candy in Pasadena. My grandfather was an accountant, helped her set up her accounting.
Oh my God,
And
really? That's great
my
candy.
grandmother came up with various different recipes, either in
Wow.
her kitchen or my grandmother's kitchen. And by the time I came along, she was gone. But
Yeah.
uh, I was raised on C's Candy, and pretty much every day of my life, I have had a piece of dark chocolate
Mm,
before bed.
mm.
That is
That's a good routine.
sweet.
Their candy's terrific.
Dark chocolate is healthy. I love dark chocolate. And obviously, when I'm out on disasters, that doesn't happen. But I come home and I always have at least a 5 pound box in the fridge. And I can just eat one piece every day because I know the rest is in there.
So what do you yeah, right. I like that. I can have one piece a day because I know
Yes,
that
I'm
I've
insane.
got
It's
my
okay.
there's no supply chain problem with the C's candies at your house. You've got them, which is
Exactly. And
fantastic.
they ship all over the country.
And they ship all over the country as well. Uh, what else do you do? How do you stay mentally, physically, and spiritually fit with the work that puts so much demand on you in all different areas like that?
Gardening helps because you're out there in the nicer weather. Walking the dogs, that always helps. Uh, I don't watch a lot of television, but there are some shows that I do enjoy. That's kind of a mental break. I try very hard to go to church every week. Sometimes that doesn't work. But now, with YouTube, your church services are on the computer, so you can listen to them.
Everything's at your disposal. Yeah.
And then when you're in the car driving, you've got KKLA and others. So there are a handful of pastors. I kind of grew up listening to their teachings and have gotten their books, obviously reading the Bible and praying a lot. And then at times just going outside and just sitting and looking at whatever the view happens to be, wherever you are, and just saying, okay, God, thank you. And I mean, that can be the middle of horror, but there's always some sort of hope, which is what Little Bear says on his foot. Hope. So there's always something positive. You just have to be willing to look for it and acknowledge it.
Absolutely right. Look for it and acknowledge it. Let's go over again to review for the audience watching. Again, the CPRGALS.com is the website to make contact with you through there. There's also disasterservicesandSupplies.com. And again, elaborate a little bit more about what that actually is for our audience.
That is all sorts of information. It's in essence a book. It's got a page for all different types of disasters. It talks about how to get prepared, what to do before, during, and after an event, all the natural disasters. It talks about smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. It talks about why insurance is important, what you're going to do if you have to evacuate, what you're going to need if you're going to shelter in place. And so there's a lot of information on FEMA, ready.gov, et cetera, that's good, but you have to search through all kinds of stuff to find it. Here it is, just laid out, plain English. I wrote it, so it sounds like me talking. And if you have questions after that, if you want a presentation for your group, you can just let me know. There's several ways we can do that, depending on time allotted, the audience, etc., and get people more aware. One of the new things on the CPR GALS, which is one of the disaster ones, for the last year or so, I've had realtors calling and saying, hey, would you do safety first aid for realtors? So that's in the works.
That's a great idea. I love the logo for the CPR GALS too.
I do too. That was my first one.
Wow, that's a great one, huh?
Yeah.
That is really terrific. Congratulations on that. And then again, as you mentioned, Disaster Preparedness Solutions.com. This is really geared towards the businesses, right?
Small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah. And you can come in and you can do now, as you're mentioning, everything doesn't have to be necessarily in person, right? Because you can do all of this online.
Yes, with the Disaster Preparedness Solutions, aka DPS, because I get tired, that starts out with a free webinar. And if you like what you're hearing, if you've learned something and you would like a consultation, I am happy to get on the phone with you and do that for your business. We can talk. And then if it seems like a good match, then I invite you into the 8-week program. And that you do your homework during the week. And then once a week, we have a Zoom meeting with everybody that's in the program at the time. And we learn from each other. We share experiences and you go from there. But at the end of this, we talk about getting your insurance checkup. We talk about cyber security. Are your computers and systems all up to where they should be? Are you CPR first aid certified? If not, why not? let's get that taken care of. And there are CPR instructors across the country, so it doesn't have to be me getting there. But if you're local or whatnot, that can be done. We can do it several different ways, but I have a team of businesses and others. Some are personal, some I would need to research in your area, for people that can give you more advice on the insurance or give you an insurance review or the whole techie world. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So my father is Mr. Caltech engineer. I did not get that from him. So you need to talk to IT people, which I have. And now, again, with Zoom or phone call, they can help you make sure that your computer stuff is up to date and safer. So all these various different factions come in at the end.
Why do you love doing this so much? It's obviously, as we've pointed out a couple of times, it's in your DNA, it's in the family background, but it's something that you've also taken the bull by the horns and made your own in the various ways that you have. What is it about this that you love so much, Jeanie?
Helping community, helping others to not have to go through something horrid without being able to mitigate that. Not everybody is going to survive a major natural disaster, but by getting trained, by knowing what to expect, by having things in place, it's going to help you and your family possibly survive until what I call the uniforms can get there, because roads are gone, food shortages, all these other things. So you need to be able to get through that first essential period. With all the medical disasters, again, we can't plan for those, but you can actually help save someone's life if you know what to do, what steps to take, what to notice before an incident happens. So if you're sitting there, we are looking at each other. I know what you look like at the beginning, but as time goes on, you start getting pale, or I see that you're starting to sweat a little bit and there's no actual reason for it. I'm going to stop and say something and say, are you okay? Is something going on? And maybe your staff or whoever else is in the room notice, but they don't want to interrupt. I'm going to bring that up because that could be a medical emergency that we could bypass because we get you help before all hell breaks loose.
Great answer to a question like that. Some of those blessings and joys and why you do what you do. What would be a final message to any of our viewers watching on Close Up Television who are enjoying the conversation? They're learning a lot from our conversation, Jeanie, but they need that little extra nudge to do this kind of thing, to learn, to go to the websites, to learn CPR, to get prepared for disasters. They're like, I live such a busy life. Do I have time for this? What would you say to that person right now?
You have time not to. One friend sent a video yesterday. I do not know in what country it was filmed. And it is, I think, more of an Asian country, but a street, a sidewalk, two ladies with selling fruit. A young lady comes up. She's not feeling well. She's hugging the wall. She slides down the wall. She passes out. She's unconscious. These two ladies that are maybe 6 feet away, just look at her. All kinds of people go by and just kind of looking at this young gal lying there and don't stop. And this happens all over this country.
Oh, yeah.
But a young man comes up after a couple of minutes and he stops and he does the head tilt chin lift, look, listen, feel for breathing, starts CPR. It's not perfect. My guess would be he's never had a class, but he did something. And then a few minutes, and he's trying to get these people to call, and they just stare at him. Another woman comes up a few minutes later, also stops, starts to help. The young woman comes to, but I'm thinking, I am so angry watching this. I want to reach in and slap all these people going, look. And here's the thing. That could be you. What if it's one of your family members and nobody cares? How upset are you going to be because you didn't bother to learn? What if your house falls down and you've got nowhere to live? Or you're separated from your family during an actual physical disaster? If you learn something today, as Ben Franklin said, as you started with, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And if you don't start now, baby steps, do one or two things every single day. Sit down with your family and come up with a family plan, which is also on the Disaster Services and Supplies website, how to do that. So get started. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. It doesn't cost a whole lot of time. We waste so much time just watching TV or stuff on the computer. Take those 10, 15, 20 minutes and do something for the future.
Beautifully said, Jeanie.
Or come over and I'll smack you on top of the head with a rolled up newspaper if that'll help.
And then she'll give you some C's candies to make it all better.
Well, but I get the dark chocolates.
She keeps the dark chocolates.
Yep. Certain things I don't share. That's one of them.
That's it. Well, you share so much with so many and have for so many years. And we wish you continued blessing and joy in your life and applaud you for the honorable way that you conduct yourself and the beautiful way that you connect with people at deep levels and want to pay this forward through these companies you've created and through all of the expertise that you have shared with everybody. There are the websites, folks, the CPRGALS.com. There is also disaster services and supplies.com. And then for the small to medium-sized businesses, disaster preparedness solutions.com as well. Jeanie, thanks for stopping by Close Up Television. I know we've done the radio shows on Close Up Radio, which were fantastic. Such an honor to have an opportunity to check it out in person through Close Up Television as well. And we hope to explore some more down the line with you as well. It'll be a pleasure.
Well, what we can do, you can email me your family disaster plan and I can share with you what you can do better. And then we could talk about that on the next one.
That's a great idea. That's a terrific idea. Put the words in action, right?
You and Doug can both do your respective family plans because you have different families, different locations, and different needs. And let's show people how this works.
How it all works in action. That's right. Jeanie Edwards, thank you very much for joining us here on Close Up Television. It was a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you.
I had a great time, Jim. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. You take care, be well. And look, the alarm didn't go off once.
I know. I was just thinking that. Yeah,
it's fantastic. Now go have some C's candies. You've earned it. Thank you, Jeanie. You take care.
Goodbye, everybody. Get ready. Get prepared. Do it now.
Do it now. Absolutely. Be well. Take care now.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. The incomparable Jeanie Edwards, a special guest here on Close Up Television. Again, we have a couple of websites that I would like to show you here, at least the links to those websites here at Close Up Television. The CPRGALS.com, check that out. Also, there is Disaster Services and Supplies.com, check that out as well. And also for the small to medium-sized businesses, there is also Disaster Preparedness Solutions.com. She's got you covered, coming and going, whatever your needs are. Jeanie Edwards really is somebody, you know, you talk about heroes and where are the heroes, right? we have one right here that we have featured on Close Up Television. I am your host, Jim Masters. Truly, always a pleasure to have an opportunity to connect with you via Close Up Television and radio. We appreciate you being with us as well. And if you learned something on this episode of Close Up Television, certainly let us know. Again, if you'd like to connect with our very special guest and learn more about all the offerings, there are the websites. They are terrific, interactive, and you can check it all out. So for everybody here at Close Up Television and Radio, we really appreciate your time as well. And we thank you for being with us. And stick with us for more incredible guests who are doing extraordinary things from around the world to make our world a better place. For all of us at Close Up Television and Radio, I'm your host, Jim Masters. Thanking you for your time this time. Till next time. And join us again right here on Close Up Television. Bye for now.